Hey guys, Lunar Fox Games here, and today I'm going to be talking about the basics of color palettes, how to make your game look nicer, and how to make things stand out. Now, before I start going into any specifics, I'm going to start by showing a couple of examples of games that do it right. So let's take a look at Hollow Knight, a very popular game in the last couple of years, an amazing Metroidvania, and we can learn a lot from this. So as we can tell, first with the environment. Anybody who's played the game before probably remembers this specific place in the game. Why? It's not because anything super interesting happens, like you don't go here a lot. Rather, it stands out a lot because of the color palettes, the composition, and everything. So first thing you notice is the colors of the environment. It's all a very nice, cool color palette with greens and blues. And something that matters a lot is we look at the player character. Their helmet is completely white. It is the only thing in the entire scene that is completely white. Now, this is true for all of Hollow Knight, where everything that's pure white is either the player or it relates heavily to the player, like health upgrades. But that just makes it so in any scenario, our player stands out a lot. And even the UI is a pure white, so that way it pops against the background because we obviously want to be seeing this a lot. Now, even this enemy right here, they're not a pure white, even though it would probably make sense for them to be. Like right here. Instead, it's dull, which makes our player stand out even more. Now, second, Super Metroid, a classic which really defined the genre. So we take a look at this environment. This is the first place you go in the game. Well, after the basic tutorial. And something we tell is the whole environment is basically one solid color. But then we take a look at Samus. Samus's armor is yellow, which pops a lot against the background. So no matter where Samus is, we can always tell where they are because of their color. Now this even goes into the enemy. The main color of their body is purple, and that's because it just looks nice against the environment and it blends in pretty well. But the spikes on it are bright yellow. This really makes the enemy pop and show that it's kind of dangerous because the spiky parts are yellow. Now if the whole thing was yellow, it would look bad, but also wouldn't look quite as threatening as just bits of yellow. Next, let's look at this amazing game by a YouTuber that you should subscribe to right now. As we can see, our player character is a completely different color from the environment. We have a lot of greens and browns here for this like cavernous environment and these lush greens. But we look at the character. Their outfit is blue, but their hair is red. Now, not only do these two colors work together well to look nice, it also serves a gameplay purpose. So if you take a look at all three of these games, something we can notice is that the player character isn't a solid color, which is the first main important thing about a game. Samus, her armor is yellow, but the helmet is red. And that's very important because even if we're in a yellow environment, we can still tell where she is, but it also lets us get a better sense of where our character is. Having the head a different color really helps out a lot. Same with Hollow Knight, same with Project Rise. These colors are chosen deliberately in order to make them stand out more. But color palette isn't just how good something looks. And for that next example, I'm going to bring up the first three Castlevania games. So we look at Castlevania 1. Now, I'm sorry for the low quality screenshot, but anybody who's played Castlevania 1 before immediately notices that Simon is a bright orange. Now this seems like a very weird design choice because they didn't need to make him orange. The NES did have a limited color palette, but not that much. They could have easily made him a different color. But they chose so because in every environment, that orange pops like crazy, so we always know where Simon is. That's very important because this is a very tricky platformer, so you always want to know where your character is. And anywhere that we can land, like these platforms, this is level 3. I chose this one because this is This is my favorite level in the game from an aesthetic point of view, because anything that we can land on is orange. As you can see, these platforms are orange, and that just makes them pop out a lot against the blue background and the blue environment. Now, we may think that we could just make Simon a more realistic color palette or make the environment look better, and that's where I present Castlevania 2. Anybody who plays the game might not even know where our character is. He's right here, by the way. He blends in super well, which is a very bad thing, because he's red, the environment here is red, and I think they're throwing a holy water. I can't even tell in this screenshot, I'll be honest. But the enemies, they also blend together a lot because they have a lot of black, and these trees have a lot of black. Our character has a lot of black, so it's very hard to tell what is going on. But then we look at Castlevania 3, and they go back to the very contrast-heavy color palette. As you can see, our player character, they're still orange, but a lot less saturated of an orange, which just makes them look better. But we still have, the main platforms. Those are orange, so you know where to land. They're green, so you know where to land. And then the background is a blue, which the greens and orange do a very nice job of contrasting. So as we can see, color palettes are a very important thing in not only knowing where our player is, but also distinguishing environments. If we go back to Super Metroid, we can tell that this is the first area of the game, not even from any gameplay stance. Like, Samus can be fully decked out, have the gravity suit and everything, and we would still be able to tell this is the first area of the game from anybody who's played it. And that's because in that game, every area has a unique color that distinguishes them. Such as this area is blue, there's some areas where it's red, like the Red Tower. It's literally in the name, the Red Tower. And that is the most bright, most red place in the game, so you can easily tell where it is. And then places like Brinstar and Norfair, they have their own color palette, which makes them distinguishable just from the color alone, which helps make our player not get lost. Hollow Knight does the same. This place is green. There's other places in the game, like there's these crystal caves or crystal mines, and they have a lot of pinks in them. There's the crossroads, which those are basically just like a dull gray, so you always know when you're in them. So now that we distinguished that color choice matters a lot, here's how to actually choose the colors. So before I even start going into Unity or anything to make the game, I first make a mock-up scene in Photoshop. Now this palette set that I picked, the tile set, came with this image, which is just basically a mock-up scene. And we have our player right here, it looks all good. But it wasn't here originally. So, this is the original color palette. Yeah, this is the original color palette. It's very much based on the Castlevania games with how much it pops. But in my case, it doesn't work well. Let's look at our player. The player's color choice just does not match the pinks and greens. It looks pretty bad in this case. So what I did was, I changed the colors of them a little bit. Like, even just making these greens into blacks helped a lot. But then making the pinks into purples really helped blend the character, because our character's color palette is really pushing to the purple side. Like, purple blends very well with it. But not only that, we darken our character a little bit, which makes them blend in with the dark, cool colors a little bit more. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Well, not exactly this, but how you can prototype this for your game. So here we are, we have the game, the mock-up scene. And first thing you want to do, drop your player in. It's very important to base all of it around the player instead of doing it vice versa, because you might have a beautiful looking scene, but the player does not fit. So you want to have the player in here at all times when you edit it. And if you're using Photoshop, a lot of software let you do this. But in Photoshop, you can do this super easy. You do this with the magic wand. And what this does is it allows you to select a color. Make sure you have it on tolerance 0 and not contiguous, because that means it will select a single color throughout the whole document. And then what you want to do is you right click it and you do layer via cut. So what that does is it makes a separate layer with just that color. We want to do that again for every color that we might want to change. I'm just going to do these 2 colors because I like the blues in the background, but you of course can do more. So we have these 2 right now. And what you want to do is you want to go in here and do hue and saturation, and then create a clipping mask, because that makes it only affect that one layer instead of the whole thing if you didn't have the mask. And you just want to play around with this. This is the best way that I found, instead of trying to do color theory, is by just experimenting on your own, see what works and see what doesn't work. So we're affecting what is green normally, and I'm going to make a completely different color palette from what I had before. So we just first experiment with the hue, see what blends in with our character well. And I'm really liking this red because it matches our character's hair, but they still pop out with the blue. We can make it more saturated or less saturated. If we have a less saturated, then it's makes it seem like a more relaxed place. But if it's more saturated, then it sort of seems like this is like one of the final areas of the game where it's very intense. For this though, I'm gonna keep the saturation like here, so that way it blends in well. And even though the pink works very well, I'm gonna do another one. Create a clipping mask. And even though it works well, we still want to experiment with it. Which I make it a little bit darker. Hey, we can bring this to black and that looks cool. But it's a lot going on. But if we bring it so it blends in a little bit better, now we have the problem where everything blends in together. So you want to find a balance between the 2. For this one, since we have the background pretty saturated, I'm going to make the main color pretty unsaturated. Like, this is basically almost gray at this point with the tint of red. And that really just makes it blend in pretty well. Experiment with the brightness. And yeah, we already have this scene done. We already have our tile set. We can of course change the hue. In this case, I liked it. But just by making a Photoshop document and changing around a couple sliders, it makes it look way better. And it's super easy to experiment without going into Unity, GameMaker, whatever engine you're using, and then manually changing all the tiles. So I guess the most important part about this is be sure to experiment a lot before you end up trying to finalize it. Because if you do this pretty late into development, it will create a big hurdle that you have to overcome, which takes up a lot of time. But then let's look at our player. Our player does not fit in well whatsoever. So, that's the wrong one. Hue and saturation, clipping mask. And we want to play around with these sliders. Let's do this. If we make them less saturated, then they don't pop as much. More saturated and they look bad. So saturation isn't the way that we want to go here. Now if you do brightness, going up just looks bad because I chose a pretty dark color palette for the player. So going a bit darker, it still doesn't look good. So that is where you might want to try contrast. So we do this, and we can decrease the brightness. Clipping mask. You can decrease the brightness of our player, but simultaneously increase the contrast. Doing this will make our player darker, but also stand out more. Now you can make it brighter with contrast. It just makes it look bad. Don't do that. But brighter with less contrast. It doesn't work in this scenario, but that could also be something. I like kind of doing opposites. And we can still tell where our character is, but maybe like change the brightness a little bit. And there we go. But the most important thing, once you do this, is actually applying it. This is just a PNG. We can't actually import this into our game and expect it to work. Which is why I have the tile set right here. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to select it with the magic wand, layer via cut, select it, and layer via cut. And then what we want to do is we want to copy this clipping mask. So what we do is, I think we just Control C and Control V. But of course, what we want to do is we have this, and then we just do another clipping mask. And it's that simple. So I'm going to do this right here. What you do is you copy the mask, you paste it, and create a clipping mask. And we have our palette all done. So what we can do now is we can just export it as a PNG and then drop it into our game. This is a bit different of a video than I normally make, but if you found this helpful, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing more tutorials like this later. And be sure to check out my dev vlogs that I'm making for my game project Rise. It is a Metroidvania game that I've been working on for a while. And hopefully you'll like it. Once again, thank you for watching the video and have a good day.